Hello, my name is Frank Peters, and I'm here today with Dr. Jimmie Harvey to speak to him about his essay in the book, The Big Casino. Welcome, Dr. Harvey.
Thank you very much.
Hello. Well, before we go into your essay, I would like to focus a little bit on your early days in your practice as an oncologist. Can you tell me a little bit about how you viewed oncology and how you went about?
Well, I was just a second-month fellow. I'd only been in Georgetown 2 months. There was a lot going on. There's a lot of intense pressure in the clinic. There's a lot you've got to learn because it's just totally new, and especially in the early 80s when things were changing so quickly. Yeah. So that was a combination of being somewhat fearful, but also somewhat overconfident of my abilities.
You think you know it all?
No, I did.
Yeah, and then as I read from the essay, there was one night that basically changed everything.
That's right.
Can you tell me what happened that evening?
Well, I was getting ready to go to a formal dinner. I'd been invited to a black tie dinner, and I got a phone call and had to go to the emergency room. And there was a patient of mine who was very short of breath. I'd only met him once a couple weeks ago, or before that. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I walked into the room, I knew what was wrong because there was an x-ray up on the back of the room that showed a large pleural effusion. He had a lot of water on his lungs and just couldn't breathe.
No. And then while you were with that patient, what happened?
Well, I knew immediately that this was going to take a long time. And I probably showed it. I think he could tell that I was a little upset, or that I was frustrated that I was going to have to be there with him instead of at dinner. So we went on with the process and did the thoracentesis, which was take the fluid off. And while we were waiting to get the x-rays afterwards, I had an opportunity to probably spend 45 minutes or an hour discussing with him his life, not the cancer, but what was going on, and found out that this man was really a refugee from Eastern Europe. He brought his family over, had been an accountant back in Eastern Europe, and was working as a doorman in Washington trying to support his family. I never would have thought to ask him that in the clinic. Never would have gotten to that point of a conversation in the clinic. Yeah. But for some reason that night, I had the time. I knew we had to wait an hour, so I was able to ask him, and he asked me about my family. So it was a different kind of clinical experience than I was used to.
What kind of a change did that make for you?
Well, first it gave me insight that these were people. These were people that had lives. They didn't just have cancer, they had lives. And it also, as I said in the essay, it was my first and my greatest lesson in oncology. Because at the end of this, he's getting ready to go home. I've been talking to him and talking to him about what we got to do and follow up. And he looks at me and he says, "I know you're frustrated." He said, "I know you missed your dinner party." And I said, "Well, a little bit, but it's a job. I've got to do it." And he looked at me and he said, "Well," he said, "Doctor, how many patients do you have?" And I've been a fellow for 2 months, and I exaggerated greatly. And I said, "Well, I've probably got 400 patients that I care for." So he looked at me and he said, "You've got 400 patients." He said, "I've got one doctor."
That's a pretty strong message. What did that do to you?
Well, I think for my career going forward, I realized then that every time I walked into a room with a patient or with a patient, a family, that I was their doctor. It was me and them. And I wasn't thinking that I had 8 more to see that day, that I had 40 to see that week, or I had to go back and make rounds on 10 people. It was me and that patient, because I'm the only doctor he has. So to be able to let him open up, to be able to let him ask questions, to take their phone calls, that to me is being an oncologist, and that's what that lesson I learned that day was.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this story. I think it demonstrates that one patient can make a really big change and a big difference in someone's career and someone's view on his daily work. Thank you very much for this story.